ladies and gentlemen, the flags of the $1 Million Round Table.
Because you typify what life's all about.
For me, MDRT is the finest thing that ever happened.
Sales happen below the neck. They happen in the heart. They happen in the tummy. I don't know, but it's below the neck.
Dare to do it. For ideas are a dime a dozen. But the person who puts them into practice can be worth millions.
We're going to start the day with a firecracker of a speaker, Michael A. On. Mike is first and foremost a life insurance salesman and a life and qualifying MDRT member. But he's also an author, an entrepreneur, an accomplished speaker who rose to international acclaim in 1978 when he won the World Championship of Public Speaking Tournament sponsored by Toastmasters International. This morning, he's going to tell us about his own personal journey from peddler to professional. And in between, I believe we'll all learn a few lessons. Ladies and gentlemen, please say good morning to the irrepressible Michael A. On.
Good morning, y'all. Y'all like that, huh? Yeah. By way of applause, please. How many of you are members of the Silver Spoon Club? How many of you were born with all the good looks, all the intelligence, all the money that you're ever going to need? You just kind of get up and go to work for the fun of it every day, huh? One liar, two, yeah. Well, I ask you, does it look like Mikey was a member of the Silver Spoon group? Here I am at birth, folks. No neck. Still ain't got no neck. I kind of look like a refrigerator with a bowling ball on top. My wife stays on my case about my weight. She says, when you go in and get your shoes shined, you got to take the guy's word for it, don't you? Folks, that's the reason I don't play golf. When I put the ball where I can hit it, I can't see it. When I put it where I can see it, I can't hit it. Here I am being baptized by the good Monsignor. He kept the silver spoon here. Here I am with my 10 brothers and sisters. Folks, I didn't sleep alone till I got married. You too, huh? What I'm trying to say is I was not a member of any Silver Spoon group. Now here I am on my first sales call. Check out them white wall tires, would you? Now I know some of you asking yourselves a question. Is this guy Jewish? Is he Italian? Is he Arabic? What is he? Actually, I'm of Lebanese descent. Now, don't get mad at me. We never win any wars because we always stop and pick up the lumber when they blow up the bridges, you know. So we can resell it. We're peddlers. What can I say? I want to share some ideas with you today, some ideas that came to me from this man. He was my grandfather. His name was Eli Mack. Actually, his name was Elias Scaff. But when he came through immigration at Ellis Island in New York, they said, look, Mac, that's too tough of a name. You need to change it. So he assumed the nickname Mac. And in fact, he was mayor of the town of Lexington, South Carolina, which ain't the end of the world, but you can see the end of the world from Lexington, South Carolina, for 12 years before they found out he was an illegal alien. Had to go down, sign up, become an American citizen. And until the day he died, he was affectionately known as Jew Mac. Now, he was not Jewish. He was of Lebanese descent. He was Lutheran by faith. Now, gang, how you get a Jew out of that, I'll never know. But in the old deep South, you were one of three things. You were a white man, you were a black man, or you were a Jew. Now, we were too dark to fit in the light category. And too light to fit in the dark category. So they called us Jews. And don't you Greeks and Italians laugh. Y'all were right in there with us. You know, I used to call my granddaddy Jiddi. That's an Arabic word for grandfather, and he used to call me his Hayati, which roughly translated means the breath of my life. Isn't that a beautiful expression? It's almost like saying someone is a friend for life, which of course is the theme for this meeting here in lovely Toronto. You know, it was right here in this city 12 years ago when I first competed for the World Championship of Public Speaking, which I lost because I went 8 seconds over my allotted time limit. Now, folks, when you do something dumb like that, the first thing you do is you have a pity party. Quick show of applause. How many people know what a pity party is? You've been there. You have a little pity party. You sit on your little pity pot, my suitcase. There I was on my pity pot, sitting on my pity pot, feeling sorry for myself as my plane taxied off without me. It was then that I realized I wasn't going to win it. I came back, I won it a year later in Vancouver, British Columbia. But you know something? From Lexington, South Carolina, my home, you got to go through Toronto to get to Vancouver. You got to know what defeat's about. You know, the woman I married is a great leader. She could have been a great lawyer, great doctor. Isn't that an oxymoron? Great lawyer. Y'all know the difference between a dead lawyer in the middle of the road and a dead skunk? Skid marks in front of the skunk. You're a lawyer too, huh? These two lawyers died and went to heaven. St. Peter greeted them at the pearly gates and said, "Sir, you can't come in here now. You're nothing but a boozer. All you ever done all your life is drink, drink, drink. I know that your wife's name's Jenny." Looked at the second fellow, "You can't come in here either. You're nothing but a stingy old miser. All you ever cared about all your life is money, money, money. And notice your wife's name's Penny." Hearing this, the third lawyer looked at his wife and said, "Come on, Fanny, they ain't gonna let us in here either." My wife, Christine, happens to be a nurse by profession. She has a unique, innate ability to love others more than she loves herself. You know, when I'm on the road, she's always writing me these little love notes, hides them in my luggage. Here's the latest one. "Dear sweetheart, go out there, lay them on the landing deck. Make us proud." She doesn't have to write these little love notes to me, tell me how nice she is and all, and tell me how wonderful things are. She had a little P.S. at the bottom of this one. P.S. Save your body for later. Folks, these notes serve all kind of purposes. I have a great leader that works for me back in Lexington, South Carolina. If you're ever having a bad day, just call my office in Lexington, South Carolina. Ask for Kathy Gunner, 803-356-0777. I guarantee you, you will get off the phone and you will have a better day because she has that unique innate ability to give more than she receives. Great leaders know how to thank people. Nobody thanks anybody anymore. You know something? I write to my children every day of my life to let them know how important they are. And I never write to them at home. I always write to them at school. And it's never "Dear Corey" or Jason or Christopher. It's always, "Hi, class. This week I'm with the $1 Million Round Table, the greatest life insurance organization on the planet." I tell them a little bit about who you are, a little bit about this lovely city of Toronto. I sell them on why I'm taking time from their lives to be with you. I want them to know how valuable I perceive this task. You see, the greatest motivator in the world is the truth. It's right there in the manufacturer's handbook. Y'all know the Bible. "Know ye the truth, and the truth shall make ye free." I never hesitate to thank people. I'm always thanking our home office personnel. Since I became a general agent in Kissimmee, Florida earlier this year for the Knights of Columbus, I have really come to appreciate the value of a thank you note. How many of you took the time this year, ask yourselves this question, to write to the home office and to thank the underwriting department? We don't take the time to do that, and that's not a joke. I spend literally half my life on Delta Airlines, greatest airline in the skies, and I never have any problems with Delta because the first thing I do when I get on to Delta is I ask the stewardess for the name and the address of her supervisor, so that I might write him or her a thank you note for the wonderful service I'm about to receive. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the $1 Million Round Table, I ask you, do I get lousy service on Delta? No. Because I'm greasing the wheel. I get what I expect. You know, a thank you note is worth 1,000 pats on the back. It contains 4 simple ingredients. Number 1, make it quick. A thank you note 6 months after the fact is an insult. Number 2, keep it short. It doesn't have to be a dissertation. Number 3, be specific. Let the person know why you're thanking them. Number 4, write it personally. You know, a personal note means so much more. You must learn to thank others who make possible our pursuit of our careers. Not just our home office, not just our mates, not just our children, but our support staff and, of course, our clients. The greatest motivator in the world is the truth. You know something? I've learned 3 things about motivation. I've learned, first of all, you can't motivate anyone. Motivation is an internal thing. It's something that happens from within. I can't come here, bless you, and suddenly you walk out of here motivated. It won't work that way. Now, the second thing I've learned about motivation is that all people are motivated. Now, wait a minute, Mike. Just a second ago you said you can't motivate people. Now you're saying everybody's motivated. Now, make up your mind. Which one is it? Oh, yeah, the people who qualified and aren't at this great meeting were more motivated to be somewhere else than they were to be here. They might have been negatively motivated, but they were nonetheless motivated. Now, the third thing I've learned about motivation is that people do things for their reasons and not for yours. Now, the trick, of course, is to figure out what their reasons are. I figured out what motivates my kids. Money. My kids love money. My twins, Corey and Jason, are now in their 4th year of scouting. And the 5-year-old who tags along as our cubette, he kind of goes along with us. He's kind of our mascot. Now, I'm in my 4th year as a den leader and as a scoutmaster. Folks, ladies and gentlemen, we Catholics have the doctrine right. There is a place between heaven and hell where one goes to suffer for one's sins, called purgatory. Cub Scouts. Guy asked me the other day, how you got time to be a Cub Scout master? Being on the road 180, 200 days a year. See, when you Cub Scout master, you get to set up the meeting dates. Sometimes we meet 3 days in a row, then we go a whole month and we don't meet. We meet when I'm in town is when we meet. Anyway, I figured out what motivates my kids. They love money. I got my kids on commission. That's right. It takes my children $128 a month to break even. Now, we don't believe in allowances in our house. Our allowance works like this. If there's enough food left over, you get to eat. If there's an empty bed, you get to sleep. Takes them $128 a month to break even after they pay their insurance. I sold them the policy. I made a hell of a commission, too. After they put some money aside for their college education and after they give some money back to God, that's how we do it in our house. Anything over $128 is theirs. Now, here's how our system works. If you make your bed, you get $1. We got these charts. You clean up your dirty room, you get $1. Make your bed, get $1. No problem. Clean up your room, get $1. No problem. Feed Jaws. That's our goldfish. Feed Jaws, get $1. No problem. Even the 5-year-old has a chart. Now, his chart says something like this. No battery. Let me explain it. Battery, up until the time he was about 3 years of age, he was addicted to the pacifier. His older brothers, the twins, Corey and Jason, called it his battery. Said, Dad, you take that sucker out, he just dies. Now, we've gone to an instant pay system now. Got some of this stuff rolled up for my wife. Told her just peel off what you need, no problem. Got them on commission. Now, it's important that we have them using this incentive. Now, check out the one that is the most important on Christopher's list would be this one. Beat Dad up. See, we have what are known as big smack attacks in our house. That's when I lay all over top of them, kiss and slobber all over them. How'd you like 240 pounds slobbering all over you? That's got to be worth $1. Folks, believe this or not, this is not about money. It's about getting children to be responsible for their own actions. The teacher spoke about it yesterday. If more parents would take that responsibility, we'd have less problem in the schools. My kids have had checking accounts since they were 6 years of age. I want them to be responsible. And I think my children were happiest the month that they came to me with a bill for $320 each, plus interest. My kids don't even understand $320. One month, though, they came to me and I could see it in their eyes. They had a little problem. The reason I recognize the problem, I've had it myself. Cash flow. You know, the bottom lip was kind of quivering a little bit. They came to me, Dad. See, Dad is a 2-syllable word in our house. Dad, we don't have enough money in the checking account to pay the bills this month. What are we going to do? Is the Knights of Columbus going to cancel our insurance? Well, I could have told them about vanishing premium. But But I figured that's the easy way out. They're not going to learn anything with vanishing premium. I told them, heck, I'm just the beneficiary on that thing. You got to die for me to get any good out of it. See, I try to run my house as much like the real world as possible, so I then did what I should do. I introduced the concept of a loan. Dad, one word, 2 syllables. Dad, what's a loan? Well, a loan works like this. For every $1 you're short this month, I'll loan you $1, we'll make up the difference. Then you can pay me back sometime later. But I'm going to charge you interest. Dad, what's interest? Well, I said interest works like this. For every $1 I loan you, you're going to pay me $2 back. Lebanese mafia. Call us the Lafia. Now picture this in your mind's eye. Here are my poor little 10-year-old twin sons who in the one breath don't know what a loan is, and the next moment they're experts on South Carolina's usury law. Dad, you can't charge rates of interest like that. Watch me. In addition, I'm going to require collateral and a promissory note. Dad, what's a promissory note? It's a written promise that you're going to pay me back and you're going to pay me the interest you owe, and I'm going to require collateral. What's collateral? I said collateral works like this. Collateral is your bicycle. Now, folks, for most of the 5,000 people in this auditorium today, we're talking about sex, oxygen, and money. For a 10-year-old, his wheels are up there on the top of that list. Last month, I repossessed a bicycle. Got that sucker sitting out there on the front porch, big old sign in front of it, for sale, cheap. Corey asked me, Dad, you willing to sell that bike, that $150 bicycle for $25? That's all that's owed to me here at On's Pawn Shop. Interestingly, all the kids in the neighborhood have gotten together. They want to buy the bike back for $25, sell it back to Corey for $100 on time. Capitalism at its best, 119 Mill Creek Road, Lexington, South Carolina. Boy, you've never seen 2 kids work so hard as you've seen them work this month. They're determined to get that bike out of hock. Folks, let me reinforce, this is not about money. Somebody came to me the other day and said, that's a cruel and a heartless lesson that you're teaching those boys. No, that's real world. I'd far rather they lose a 2-wheeler today than a 4-wheeler 20 years from now, because they failed to make the payments on it. Folks, the greatest motivator in the world is the truth. Know ye the truth, and the truth shall make you free. It sounds crazy, but to build friends for life, we must base our friendship on truth and integrity. Therein lies the greatest good that any of us can do, to share the truth, for it is the greatest motivator in the world. It's the truth. Let me close this thing with a very special story about a young man in the little town of Thompson, Georgia. His name was Tom Monahan. I called on this young man some 14 years ago, just after I got into the life insurance business. Thompson, Georgia is a lot like a lot of small towns across North America. People sort of live and they grow and they die. They never make much of a major mark on the international landscape. They're just good, hardworking people who want to raise a family, who want to make a living. When I called on Tom in my first year in the business, I didn't sell him anything. You see, back then I was calling myself a business counselor. You ever noticed how some life insurance agents will come up with 1,000 different ways to hide the fact that we sell life insurance? I've seen them all. Financial planning experts. My favorite one. You might want to put this on your card. You might want to write this down. My favorite one. Forecaster of financial futures. Seems like we'll do about near anything but admit that we sell life insurance. Now, Tom was about my age at the time. In fact, age was not the only similarity. Both Tom and I were recently married. We would both one day have our own twin sons. Neither of us completed our education because of illness to our parents. In other words, we both made our way without the help of a silver spoon. Tom owned a little service station out at the edge of town near Interstate 20. Thompson is a typical small town. Nobody famous comes from these small towns. People simply carve out a living dealing with each other. His dad had died under a grease rack while changing oil in a car one hot August afternoon. You know, it was that same grease rack over which I tried to sell Tom I think I called it a business investment plan. I think those were the words that I used to disguise selling life insurance. Anyway, I never sold Tom a thing, but that didn't deter me from calling on him when I was in the Thompson area, because after all, he was a member of the Knights of Columbus, and he did have the best gas prices in town. And who knows, maybe one day he would buy something from me. You know, Tom had been on my case almost from the first day that I had met him, to come out and to meet his wife, Kathy, to meet their little twin sons. You know, had I been a true life insurance professional, I'd have visited him in his home in front of the people who meant the most to him. But no, you see, I was an executive, and we executives always did business in the man's business. Well, to be short about it, I never sold Tom a thing. One Saturday afternoon, I was in the town of Thompson for a funeral for a client. Tom knew I was there for that reason. You see, he also knew that we executives didn't work on Saturdays. So when I pulled into his service station after the funeral to gas up for my trip back to Lexington, South Carolina, he had the phone up to his ear, and before I could get out of the car, he was calling his wife, Kathy, to tell her that I'd be joining them for dinner that night, put on an extra steak. Well, I knew now that if I was going to keep on buying gas at Tom's place, I'd have to either eat with the family that night or find a new gas station. You know something? Had I been a professional salesman, I'd have jumped at that opportunity. But no, you see, I was an executive, and we executives never visited a man in their home. They knew we never worked on a Saturday. Anyway, why did I want to waste my time going to his home, oohing and ahhing over his little twin sons, when I had a nice little set of twin sons in my home that I could go home and I could ooh and ah over them? But I went, and when I arrived at Tom's modest home that evening, I noticed that he lived in a little duplex out on the edge of town. He actually had to rent the other half of it just to make the payments. I also knew that he had just bought it, and like all the furniture in it, all the furniture and the duplex except were probably mortgaged to the hilt. You see, I'd learned this in my extensive estate analysis over the grease rack a year earlier. Kathy was a lovely cook and a wonderful mother, and to be fair, he hadn't said half enough about those little twin sons. They were cute as they could be. And when they went off to bed that night, they came up and kissed me goodbye, just like I was family. Tom and I sat there at the kitchen table, and we broke out a bottle of his daddy's cherry wine, his uncle's cherry wine, who'd sent it to him from up in Neenah, Wisconsin. As we drank wine that evening, Tom shared a story about his dad. He said, when we were growing up in the little town of Neenah, we lived right there next door to the Anderson family. They were easily the most popular family in town. Mr. Anderson coached Little League. He taught Sunday school. He was a Cub Scout den leader. In other words, he was the pillar of the community. Mr. Anderson, like most of us, was a dairy farmer. One hot summer day, he was out back mending the fence when a little Anderson boy had toddled down to the stock pond and was down there swimming along the edge. Now, somehow the boy got in over his head, and he was fighting for his life. And Mr. Anderson, who couldn't swim, without a moment's hesitation, ran down to the pond, jumped in, managed to grab the drowning son, fished him above his head, and hurled him to the embankment. And he saved the child's life. But the father couldn't swim. And now he was fighting for his own life. In a matter of moments, Mr. Anderson drowned. Well, about all they talked about for months thereafter was how courageous it was that Mr. Anderson would give up his own life so that his son could live. Tom was telling me this story. He said, I was riding down the road with my daddy several months later in the pickup truck when we passed the Anderson household. He said, I remember remarking to my dad how wonderful it was that this man would give up his life so that his son could live. He said, I remember my daddy telling me something back then. He said, you know, Mike, any father would do that for his son. He said, I didn't understand what he meant back then, but I understand it now. He said, I'd give up my life this moment for those little baby boys back there in that bedroom. Well, this thing, it hit me all wrong. I knew I had to try to sell, a year ago I tried to sell him this plan that would cover the problems, that would take care of his family, and I wasn't successful. But I knew I had to say something now, and I asked him, I said, Tom, what would you be giving up your life for? He looked at me kind of funny. I said, be fair. You don't own this house. You don't own a stick of furniture in it. You'd have to move from this neighborhood to an area that would be a lot less desirable. Let's face it, Kathy's a lovely wife. She's a wonderful cook. She couldn't run your service station. And your sons would be deprived of the same college education that you were deprived of. when your daddy died? Why would you be paying the highest and the dearest price that a man or a woman could pay? Why would you do this? And then he paused. And I paused. Because years ago, I once heard Joe Gandolfo make this statement, that the first person who speaks loses. In this case, the first person who spoke won. It seemed like about 2 minutes before Tom said anything. And when he did, he said, Mike, I want you to get up and get out of that chair and get out of my house. Go out there to your car and bring your briefcase back in here. And let's talk about that plan that we talked about a year ago. Well, I took my sweet time going out to the car that night because, frankly, I was praying that Tom would do the right thing and purchase this protection. And when I got back inside, we reconstructed the plan. I remembered everything. His situation just wasn't that complex. I laid out the policy. I paid special attention to his affordability. And when it was all done, he looked at me and he said, Mike, that's not good enough. I said, well, Tom, my company has a policy. And in this policy, we don't believe in overselling you. The policy won't do you a bit of good if it lapses 6 months after you take it out. You lose, the company loses. It's a no-win deal. He said, Mike, if that's all you can sell me, I understand and I really do appreciate it. I'll get what I can from you and I'll buy the balance from my local Prudential guy. Folks, Mama raised one crazy child. That was my older brother. I was born at night, but not last night. Well, I wrote up the policy the way he wanted it, but I still didn't think that he could afford it. He was already overextended. When we got through, we walked out onto his front porch. It was about 11 o'clock. I said, Tom, I want to thank you for everything that you did for me this evening. He looked at me funny. He said, no, I want to thank you. When you came over here tonight, I was just a boy in a man's body. You know what I was going to do tomorrow morning? I was going to get on my motorcycle and ride out through the sand dunes on Monday morning. Tell you what, I'm selling that bike. Heck, the payments on it are half again what the insurance is going to cost me. That's how I'm going to pay for it. He said, now I'm a man, I want to thank you for that. I responded, Tom, no, when I came over here tonight, I was just another hustler peddling my wares like a snake oil salesman. Tonight, you made me a man, a salesman, and I want to thank you for that. He put his arm around me and said, you know, Mike, men can drink a whole lot more than boys. Let's go back in there and finish up that cherry wine. When I called my wife to tell her I'd be late, had to let her know I was going to be late. For the first time in my career, I was on fire. I finally understood why I was selling this stuff. All the way home, I kept saying to myself, I can't wait to get back to work on Monday morning. I can't wait. And I tell this story, ladies and gentlemen, because it has recent connotations. Sometime back in the middle of the night, I received a telephone call. You could tell when the phone rang that tragedy awaited. In between sobs on the other end, I managed to interpret that it was Kathy calling to tell me that Tom had just been killed in an automobile accident while trying to help a disabled couple whose car had broken down on I-20. He was struck by a tractor-trailer truck as he was trying to help their car to safety, and he was killed instantly. When I hung up the phone that evening, I turned to my wife and I just cried. Why did it have to happen to Tom? Here was a kid who had the world at his feet, killed instantly by a sleepy driver at 3 o'clock in the morning while trying to help someone else. I don't know when I felt so utterly useless. I told my wife if I weren't so big and clumsy, I'd lay on the floor and cry. Why did it have to happen to Tom? But you see, Tom had told his wife, if anything ever happened to him, she should call me first. As I drove the 90 miles to Thompson, Georgia that evening, it occurred to me that we life insurance professionals are performing the highest and the most honorable work that a man or a woman can perform. We fulfill God's work when we make it possible for a family to do what mommy or daddy would have done had they been there to do it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why we are fulfilling the highest calling that there is. That is why we build friends for life. Finally, of course, as the Catholic priest says, finally, he don't mean immediately. Let me close with a very special prayer. It could be the MDRT prayer. You know, we Catholics collect saints. Every now and then we get one we don't like, we call him back in. I guess it's like a Toyota. You can call him back in, you know. This guy Christopher who's chugging along, he had already attained what you might call your tenure in sainthood. You know, a couple centuries under the belt, and all of a sudden, Pope calls him back in. Well, we got one that how'd you like to have a whole warehouse full of St. Christopher medals, by the way? We got one that we kept, and his name was Francis, and his prayer goes like this. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there's doubt, faith. Where there's despair, hope. Where there's darkness, light. Where there's sadness, joy. Isn't that what we do? We try to replace sadness with joy. The prayer goes on to say, O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For you see, it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born into eternal life. You have been a wonderful group. You have honored me with your presence. God bless.